We're going to talk about some of the common ways to position your drums, the grip, and foot positioning in this video. When we're playing beats or grooves on the hi-hat, we usually start in this position. Left hand on the snare and right hand crossing over to play on the hi-hat. As a starting point on the snare drum, I suggest using the tip of the stick when you strike the drum. On the hi-hat, you want to use the shoulder of the stick. I prefer to play with the thumb up on the hi-hat. We play so much on the hi-hat that this helps you to stay light and ready to keep moving. You need to keep a slight break in your wrist to make this work, and that can be a challenge to find the correct angle at first. Some drummers prefer to play with their hand more turned over on the hi-hat, like the positioning we have for the snare drum. If you're left-handed, you can experiment with a few ways of playing and see what feels good to you. The first would be to play exactly the same as a right-handed player, crossed over like this. Another way that works for a lot of people is to switch just your hand orientation so that your strong hand, the left hand, is on the hi-hat and the right hand hits the snare, with the kit set up just the same way. Another option would be to flip everything and orient the entire kit for a left-handed player, the mirror image of this setup. You should experiment and see what feels most comfortable for you if you're left-handed. I usually first try to keep my private students on the right-handed setup, as it makes it easier when you go to play on someone else's kit or sit in with a band. But I also have drummer pals that use the mirror image or left-hand oriented setup, so you have to just kind of see what works best for you. The other place we often play grooves is on the ride cymbal. Again, I would suggest using the tip of the stick on the ride. I also use the thumb up toward the ceiling positioning with the break in the wrist, as you can see here. The overtones can really build up on this large cymbal, so staying light and using the tip makes sense most of the time. It's easier to get used to the wrist break and positioning on the ride, so you might want to get used to it here before trying it over on the hi-hat. Left-handed players are going to experiment again and see what works for this part of the kit. You can either move the ride to the left side of the hi-hat so that you can use your left hand, or you could also cross over or just play the same as a right-handed drummer. You're just going to have to see, again, what feels good. All right. When we're playing both hands on the snare drum, this is a good starting point. I call this the A-frame shape. And here we are with both hands up on the high tom. Next, a good starting point for both hands on the floor tom. Notice the thumb turned up toward the ceiling with the right hand here. Again, tips of the sticks on the drums when you strike them. Crash cymbals can be struck a number of ways, but I would start with this way, using the shoulder of the stick against the edge and sort of glancing at the cymbal. If you strike these cymbals straight on and downward, you're causing more stress and are likely to crack these cymbals sooner, as we do want to hit them kind of hard to get the right tone out of them. Here you can see more of a close-up of the A-frame starting position on the snare drum. And I'm also going to give you a view from the side. I'm going to hold my sticks up here so that you can see how my fingers lightly wrap around the back and the angle that the sticks are most often held in your hand in matched grip. All right, here we are with your feet. There are a couple of standard options for your feet that you can experiment with to see what works best and is most comfortable for you. First option is both heels down on the pedals. The second is both heels slightly up. With both positions, I would likely have my foot more forward on the pedal board on the hi-hat versus the kick pedal. There are multiple ways of striking the kick drum with the bass drum beater as well. A good starting point is when using the heel down position, striking the drum and letting the beater come back off the head. You'll also need to control the rebound of the beater with your foot on the pedal board so that it doesn't keep bouncing around like crazy. The next most common way to hit the kick is to bury the beater in the head. Usually you would use the heel up technique when you bury the beater, and for obvious reasons it's not that great if you need to play soft. It works great when you need to play loud though. With this technique, you leave the beater there until you're going to strike the drum again. As you can see, I probably position my foot a bit further away from the drum or further down on the pedal board when I use this playing position. There's a sweet spot on the kick pedal that helps you with speed. You'll again need to experiment to find it, and usually having your foot up too high on the pedal board makes playing the kick drum more difficult. You can also kind of combine these techniques into a hybrid, something like this. It's not really an optimal starting point though, so I would suggest trying one of these other ways first. With the hi-hat foot, you have some options as well. The main two being heel up or heel down once again. My foot is slightly more forward on the pedal board with the heel down position. Another option would be rocking the foot back and forth from heel to toe. One general note is to be mindful of where your throne is, as that determines your distance from the kit. You need to be sitting in the right spot for all the mechanics to work easily on the drum set. You'll be fighting against yourself if your kit isn't set up at the right height for you, or if your throne is too high or too low, or too far away or too close. So really try and get things set up well for yourself. These guidelines will hopefully help that. We want to have a semi-right angle with both the elbows and the knees, as that should put us a good distance and height to the kit. Notice how my knee is kind of close to the bottom of the snare drum height-wise here. If the snare is too low, you'll end up hitting your leg or resting your arm on your leg, neither of which is optimal. My snare stick is in the position to strike the drum in the middle of the head, and my arms are relaxed down to the side of my body. If we're too far away, you'll be reaching, and if you're too close in this position, your elbows will be behind your body. So check out the distance between the hi-hat and the snare too, because if you're crashing your sticks into each other, you don't have enough space there. And hopefully you can get everything all set up for optimal success.